Have you ever felt like no matter how hard you work, it is never enough? Meet Matthew, a 28-year-old entrepreneur who seems to have it all. He wakes up at 5, hits the gym, dives into his startup, and works late into the night. On paper, his life is perfect: a growing business, a loving relationship, and a structured routine. But behind the scenes, Matthew is falling apart. Every morning, he stares in the mirror, frustrated that his body has not changed. Every meeting, he compares his startup to competitors who seem to be skyrocketing overnight. Every evening, he returns home exhausted, carrying the weight of his own expectations. The faster he tries to go, the more stuck he feels. Anxiety, stress, and frustration are quietly consuming him, and he does not even realize it. What if I told you that Matthew's biggest obstacle is not a lack of effort, talent, or resources? It is something far simpler and far more powerful: his constant rush, his impatience, and his need for instant results are sabotaging everything he has worked for. In this video, you are about to discover the story of Matthew's transformation, a journey from burnout to balance, from stress to sustainable success. You will learn why slowing down could actually be the secret to moving faster, achieving more, and finally enjoying the life you are building. Before we dive in, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel so you do not miss any of our deep dives into success, productivity, and life-changing habits. And comment below, which part of your life do you feel most rushed in: work, body, relationships, or money? Now, let us jump into Matthew's story and uncover the surprising truth about why your rush might actually be holding you back. One Friday evening, Matthew came home feeling the familiar weight of exhaustion pressing down on him, his mind still buzzing with numbers, metrics, and deadlines, while his body ached from yet another relentless day of early mornings and late nights. The apartment was quiet, almost unnervingly so, and he immediately noticed Emily sitting at the kitchen table, her posture calm but her eyes serious. There were no phones, no background noise, no distractions, just the two of them and the quiet tension in the room. Matthew's stomach tightened as he realized that the silence was not casual. It was purposeful, a prelude to a conversation he had been avoiding for weeks, maybe months. Emily began gently, but with a firmness that demanded attention. She told him that she loved him, that she envisioned a future together. And then, with a voice tinged with concern, asked the question Matthew had never wanted to face. "Are you killing yourself?" "Not in the physical sense," she clarified, "but emotionally and mentally." She spoke of his sleepless nights, the constant calculations of what could have been done faster or better, and the way he carried the anxiety of unfinished goals into every moment. Every interaction, every meal, every conversation. Matthew's heart sank. He had thought he was doing the right thing, pushing forward with discipline, dedication, and unrelenting effort. But Emily's words cut through the rationalizations he had built around his hustle. As she continued, Matthew began to see his life through her eyes for the first time in a long while. She described how he was physically present but mentally elsewhere, how he would sit beside her during dinner yet be engrossed in thoughts of the next project, how he would go on walks but mentally map out business strategies rather than enjoying the movement of his own legs or the warmth of the sun. Every achievement he had accomplished, she said, was overshadowed by his inability to pause, reflect, and recognize it. The growth of his startup, the discipline in his workouts, even the love and stability in their relationship were all being undermined by his constant hurry and comparison to others. Matthew tried to argue. insisting that the intensity was necessary for success, that relaxing or slowing down meant falling behind. But Emily's voice grew firm, unwavering. She told him that this relentless pursuit was not propelling him forward, but anchoring him in a state of perpetual dissatisfaction. His anxiety, disguised as ambition, was the real obstacle. It was eating away at his joy, clouding his accomplishments, and straining their relationship in ways he had not acknowledged. For the first time, Matthew allowed himself to truly listen. He stopped defending his habits and, instead, reflected on the moments Emily described: the sleepless nights, the obsessive tracking of metrics, the mind always in the future and never in the present. He realized that he had been running so fast that he had lost the ability to walk, to breathe, to simply exist without measurement. The conversation left a mark deeper than any business setback or missed milestone ever could. It opened his eyes to the destructive pattern he had been locked in, a cycle of perpetual motion without true progress, where doing more was mistaken for achieving more, and where success had become synonymous with anxiety. By the end of that evening, Matthew felt a strange mix of shame and clarity. He understood that his partner's words were not criticisms but revelations, reflections of the reality he had been avoiding. In that moment, he recognized that the path to genuine accomplishment and fulfillment would not come from increasing his pace, but from learning to slow down, to honor the present, and to find balance between action and stillness. For the first time, he began to see that being constantly busy had not made him successful. It had made him blind to the very successes he already had. And it was only by stepping back and reevaluating his approach that he could start to reclaim not just his productivity, but his peace, his joy, and his connection with those who mattered most. After the eye-opening conversation with Emily, Matthew found himself unsettled yet strangely open, aware that the patterns he had been clinging to were eroding not only his mental health but also the quality of his life. The following week, he met Kenji Tanaka, a psychologist whose reputation for blending Western psychology with Eastern philosophy intrigued him. Tanaka greeted him with a calm smile, the kind that seemed to anchor time itself. And immediately Matthew sensed that this would be unlike any consultation he had ever experienced. They began with ordinary questions about Matthew's routines, goals, and anxieties. But almost immediately, Tanaka's approach diverged from the expected. Instead of offering quick solutions or prescriptive advice, he asked Matthew to pause, to notice his own breathing, and to observe the sensations of tension coiled within his shoulders and chest. Matthew fidgeted, expecting instruction, but Tanaka simply watched, allowing silence to settle, a space that was strangely uncomfortable yet undeniably restorative. It was in this stillness that Tanaka began to introduce the concept of wu-wei, a principle drawn from Taoist philosophy, often translated as effortless action. He explained that wu-wei did not mean inaction or laziness, but rather aligning one's efforts with the natural flow of circumstances, so that progress arises without the strain and resistance that Matthew had been familiar with. He illustrated this with an analogy from the river. The water does not force its way over rocks, yet it carves valleys and nourishes life along its path. Matthew listened intently, recognizing the paradox. His relentless pushing resembled boulders in a river, causing turbulence and blockages, while wu-wei suggested a harmony that produced far greater effect with far less strain. Tanaka guided him through exercises, encouraging Matthew to approach his work with intention but without the internal compulsion to control every outcome, to experiment with letting moments unfold instead of micromanaging them. Tanaka also introduced the idea of a principle emphasizing the power of empty space, the silence between notes, the pauses that give meaning to action. He likened Ma to the space between brushstrokes in calligraphy, which defines the artwork as much as the ink itself. Matthew realized that in his life, every moment was overfilled, every schedule, Every thought, every conversation jammed with urgency. There was no room to breathe, to reflect, or to connect deeply with the world around him. Through guided meditations, reflective journaling, and mindful observation, Tanaka helped Matthew practice creating in his day. Time deliberately left unstructured, conversations listened to fully, and tasks approached without the compulsive need to rush. At first, Matthew resisted internally, expecting that the world would punish him for slowing down, that opportunities would slip away, and that his ambitions would falter. Yet, over days and weeks, he began to notice subtle shifts, ideas arising more naturally, solutions presenting themselves without frantic effort, and interactions with colleagues and Emily becoming richer and more meaningful. Matthew's sessions with Tanaka became a journey of unlearning habitual haste and rediscovering the rhythm of measured, conscious effort. The lessons of Wu Wei and Mao were not merely intellectual. They were lived experiences, teaching him that slowing down was not a step back but an acceleration of real progress. Tasks that had once felt overwhelming became manageable, and the satisfaction of completing them deepened because he was fully present. In time, Matthew understood that his anxiety had thrived in the friction between his ambition and the resistance of reality, and that by embracing the effortless flow of Wu Wei and the spaciousness of Ma, he could engage with life in a way that was not only productive but profoundly sustaining. What had once been a life dominated by hurried motion gradually transformed into one in which intention, presence, and patience created momentum far stronger than the frantic energy he had relied on for so long, revealing that true progress is often found in the spaces we dare to leave empty. After several weeks of practicing Wu Wei and Ma under Tanaka's guidance, Matthew began to feel a subtle but profound shift in his perception of life. Yet he sensed there was still more to uncover. Tanaka introduced him to 3 interrelated practices that promised to deepen this transformation: Shoshin, Kaizen, and Konokai. They began with Shoshin, the concept of beginner's mind, which invited Matthew to approach every experience as if for the first time, free from the heavy burden of preconceptions and expectations. At first, Matthew struggled with the idea. His mind was conditioned to rush toward conclusions, to judge outcomes quickly, and to measure success by immediate results. Yet, through guided exercises and reflective dialogues with Tanaka, he began noticing the power of curiosity untainted by expertise, the joy in observing a familiar task as though it were entirely new, and the way each encounter, whether with a colleague or a project, revealed nuances he had never seen before. The beginner's mind did not diminish his skills or ambitions. Rather, it infused them with a freshness and openness that had been absent in his life, allowing him to engage fully with each moment instead of projecting anxieties about the next. Next came Kaizen, the philosophy of small, continuous improvements. Matthew realized that his previous approach, chasing rapid, dramatic results, had left him exhausted and frustrated, constantly measuring progress against an unattainable ideal. Tanaka encouraged him to break down each goal into tiny, deliberate steps and to celebrate incremental achievements, no matter how modest. They experimented together with applying Kaizen to both professional and personal routines, whether it was refining a business presentation, improving communication with Emily, or dedicating just a few minutes a day to mindful reflection. Gradually, Matthew observed that these small actions compounded in unexpected ways, producing momentum and confidence that no frantic effort could replicate. He began to understand that mastery and growth were not destinations to be reached through force, but journeys shaped by persistence, attention, and patience, where even the smallest improvements contributed meaningfully to long-term success. Finally, Tanaka introduced Konokai, the practice of finding peace in moments of emptiness, of intentionally embracing stillness without judgment or urgency. Matthew had always feared emptiness, equating it with wasted time or lost opportunity. Yet Konokai revealed its hidden power. It was within these quiet spaces that clarity emerged. Creativity flourished, and decisions became naturally aligned with both intention and circumstance. They practiced sitting together in silence, walking without a specific goal, and noticing the rhythm of daily life without interference. Discovering that the world itself offered guidance when one stopped struggling against it. Matthew learned to integrate Konokai into his work and relationships, creating pauses between tasks, conversations, and thoughts, and discovering that these pauses were not voids but vessels filled with insight and energy. Through the intertwined practices of Shoshin, Kaizen, and Konokai, Matthew's perception of success and progress transformed. He no longer rushed toward the finish line or measured his worth by immediate outcomes. Instead, he found fulfillment in the process itself, in the attention, effort, and awareness he brought to each moment. Life began to feel expansive rather than constricted, each day offering opportunities to grow, connect, and appreciate, not because of external achievements, but because of his presence within the unfolding journey. Matthew realized that these lessons were not quick fixes, but lifelong disciplines, guiding him toward a sustainable rhythm of engagement and reflection. In embracing beginner's mind, small continuous improvements, and the peaceful depth of emptiness, he discovered that real progress is cultivated not in haste, but in thoughtful, patient, and deliberate practice, a lesson that gradually permeated every aspect of his personal and professional life, allowing him to move forward with clarity, resilience, and grace. As Matthew immersed himself in the teachings of Shoshin, Kaizen, and Konokai, he recognized that true transformation required not only philosophical understanding but also consistent, practical rituals that would rewire his daily experience. Tanaka suggested he begin with daily silence, a simple yet profound practice where Matthew would dedicate a portion of each morning to sit quietly, free from distractions, allowing his mind to settle and his awareness to sharpen. Initially, the stillness felt uncomfortable. His thoughts, once relentless, surged and resisted restraint. Yet, as days turned into weeks, Matthew began noticing subtle shifts. His mind no longer darted compulsively from task to task, and a sense of calm began to take root, creating space for reflection and insight that he had long neglected in his pursuit of constant productivity. Alongside silence, Matthew began keeping a gratitude journal, a ritual that at first felt almost trivial to someone accustomed to measuring success in measurable milestones and achievements. Each evening, he wrote down 3 things he had noticed, appreciated, or learned that day. Over time, this small act shifted his perception, drawing his attention away from comparisons and unmet expectations and toward the richness present in ordinary moments. He discovered joy in the laughter of Emily, the subtle improvements in his work, and the quiet beauty of morning light streaming into his office. The journal became more than a record. It became a lens through which he could perceive life as a series of small, meaningful experiences rather than an endless race toward a distant goal. To deepen this recalibration of attention, Matthew committed to a 30-day social media detox, a challenge that initially felt like a withdrawal from essential connectivity. He noticed the habitual reflex to check notifications, the unconscious absorption of other people's curated lives, and the subtle erosion of his own presence in the process. By deliberately stepping away, Matthew began reclaiming the mental energy that had been dispersed in endless scrolling and comparison. In the quiet, unmediated space, he became acutely aware of his own rhythms, thoughts, and emotions, noticing patterns of anxiety and distraction that had previously gone unexamined. He experienced the satisfaction of completing work with full focus, of listening to conversations without the interference of digital interruptions, and of savoring the small pleasures of daily life with heightened awareness. Through these intertwined rituals, daily silence, gratitude journaling, and digital detox, Matthew learned to cultivate a presence that no longer reacted impulsively to the pressures and comparisons of the outside world. Anxiety, once a constant undercurrent, began to replaced by a steady attention to process and a deepened appreciation for the unfolding of each day. He realized that life's richness was not measured solely by achievements or recognition, but by his capacity to inhabit moments fully, to witness subtle changes, and to engage with intention and awareness. Each ritual became both anchor and guide, reinforcing the practices he had learned from Dra Tanaka, allowing him to embody Wu-Wei, Shoshin, Kaizen, and Konokai intangible daily ways. By the end of the 30 days, Matthew noticed a profound transformation. He approached work and relationships with renewed clarity, patience, and curiosity. He no longer rushed past moments in pursuit of distant goals, but rather experienced each day as a canvas of learning, reflection, and presence. The rituals became integrated into the rhythm of his life, not as rigid obligations but as natural extensions of his growing awareness. Matthew's journey revealed that mental clarity, emotional balance, and genuine fulfillment emerge not through frantic effort or constant achievement, but through disciplined attention, deliberate presence, and the cultivation of mindful habits that allow the mind and spirit to flourish together, creating a life that is both productive and profoundly alive. Over the following 6 months, Matthew experienced a transformation that went far beyond the metrics of success he had once chased so desperately. His business, which had previously been a source of constant stress and sleepless nights, began to thrive in ways he had never imagined. By applying the principles of Wu-Wei and Kaizen, he approached each project with deliberate attention, allowing ideas to mature and decisions to be made with clarity rather than urgency. His team responded to the shift as well. Instead of a leader who was constantly pushing and panicking, they now had a guide who modeled patience, focus, and steady growth. Projects flowed more smoothly, innovations emerged naturally, and client relationships deepened because Matthew was fully present in each interaction. The business was growing, not because he was rushing, but because he had created space for thoughtful action, consistent follow-through, and meaningful engagement, physically and mentally. Matthew felt the benefits as well. His anxiety, once a constant companion, had significantly diminished. Daily rituals like silence, gratitude journaling, and limited social media consumption became second nature, giving him the mental space to rest and recharge. He rediscovered the joy of movement, eating mindfully, and listening to his body, understanding that self-care was not a luxury but an essential ingredient for sustainable growth. Sleep returned, energy levels stabilized, and he found that he could focus deeply for longer periods, accomplishing more in less time simply by honoring his natural rhythm instead of fighting against it. Perhaps most profoundly, Matthew's relationships flourished. He had more presence with Emily, truly listening and engaging without distraction or internal tension. Friendships, family connections, and professional relationships all benefited from his newfound ability to be fully there, to celebrate small victories, and to support others without the shadow of constant comparison or impatience. Conversations became richer, laughter more genuine, and bonds deeper. Matthew realized that the quality of presence, more than the quantity of tasks completed or goals achieved, determined the richness of his life. Through this journey, Matthew internalized a lesson that had eluded him for years. Real growth is not a sprint but a process. And the most profound achievements come not from rushing, but from consistency, patience, and presence. By slowing down, he paradoxically accomplished more, finding that life's rewards, joy, connection, and sustainable success emerge when we honor the natural rhythm of effort and rest, action and reflection. The transformation was not merely external. It touched the very way he experienced life, making each moment more vivid, meaningful, and satisfying. Matthew's story is a reminder that in a world that constantly urges speed, we often gain the most by slowing down, by embracing patience, mindfulness, and deliberate practice. Anyone can cultivate a life that balances achievement with well-being, action with reflection, and ambition with presence. His journey demonstrates that success without presence is hollow, while growth rooted in awareness and consistent effort creates lasting fulfillment. Thank you for joining Matthew's journey. If you found his story inspiring, do not forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel for more life-changing insights, and hit the notification bell so you never miss a moment of guidance that can help you slow down, focus, and thrive in your own life.